What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty, man. Can you believe we're on episode 4 already, man? We've been through top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 running backs, top 10 wide receivers, and now we are in every Dynasty fantasy football's favorite part of the season, and it is rookie fever. We all got rookie fever. We all need that ibuprofen to get the temp down, but they got us hot and bothered, man. We just got the NFL Combine wrapped up today. We're going to be talking about Combine reactions, analysis, all of that good stuff. I want to shout out the people that are up in here already. Shout out to my boy Devin Mack. We see you. You tapped in. I like it. I love it, man. So yeah, man, like I said, we're going to be talking about the NFL Combine, give a little bit of our reactions, talk about what's going on. And we'll just go through each of the position groups really quickly and really just get to it that way. So feel free to give your analysis, pipe in the chat, and let's really just go from there. So I'm going to bring in our co-host War, and we'll just get the show started, man. So War, how you doing, man?
Let's go. Let's
I love it.
go.
I love it, man. So first and foremost, today was a pretty busy day news-wise from the NFL.
Yeah.
And I got a list of things on my phone. There's so much that I had to make sure that I just had them written down. And I'm going to go through them quickly just to say them. And then you tell me what you want to talk about. But today in the NFL, Derek Carr signs a deal with the Saints, 4 years, $150 million. Geno Smith re-signs with the Seahawks, 3 years, $105 million. The NFL reinstates Jaguars wide receiver Calvin Ridley. The Cowboys tag Tony Pollard. The Raiders tag Josh Jacobs. And the Jaguars tag Evan Engram. The Chiefs announced that they will not be tagging left tackle Orlando Brown. And then players that are expected to be released or did get released are Eric Kendricks from my Minnesota Vikings, Bud Dupree, Frank Clark, Leonard Floyd, Robbie Anderson, or should I say Chosen Anderson, and Damian Wilson. So lots of news. Also, one thing that we're all waiting on, Lamar Jackson news has not dropped yet. They have just a few more. I think it's tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's the deadline.
Yeah, I believe so. To apply to either the exclusive or the standard franchise tag.
Yeah, so we're waiting
Yeah.
on the Lamar Jackson bomb drop. So, what of that is newsworthy, man? What should we talk about from there?
Come on, Drew. You know me. First thing I thought of, first thing I heard when I heard Orlando Brown, I was like, yeah, man. Any offensive lineman that's even halfway decent, come on down. Chicago. You want to be an offensive lineman, you want to be a top level, come to the Bears. Come to the Bears. Frank Clark too. Anybody from the Chiefs, come on down. Come on
All
down.
right.
Really, a few things stood out. It's kind of baffling to me the Derek Carr news. Derek Carr, initially everybody thought the same thing when he got released by the Raiders. The top rumor was he's going to the Saints, and then it
Hmm.
almost came to where it was like, okay, it seems like he's probably not going to be a Saint. He's probably going to be a Jet.
Well,
So
that
instantly,
happened last night. Last night they announced that Derek Carr was leaning as the
yeah,
Jets is his favorite.
yeah. Yeah. So when I see the news come across that Derek Carr was going to be a member of the Saints, that immediately made me believe that the Jets know something that we don't know because he totally wanted to go there. I'm thinking that Aaron Rodgers is on his way to becoming a New York Jet for
You think so?
sure. Yeah, because they had Derek Carr in the bag. Derek Carr wouldn't have just jumped to the Saints unless the Jets told him, "Hey, man, I think we got our plan." So I think Aaron
Yeah, because
Rodgers is going to be a
like I
Jet
said, man,
by the
they
end of the
said
week.
okay, yeah. Like I said yesterday, at the end of the day, we had just finished the combine and guys were packing bags and headed home after their weekend in Indianapolis. And the news came across that Derek Carr was leaning towards signing with the New York Jets, and they expected a deal to be done some point in the next couple of days. And then today it was like, boom, he's going to New Orleans. And so I think, like you said, there's something happened behind closed doors, or just to play devil's advocate, New Orleans came in and said, "Screw it, we're going to throw you some extra cash and make sure that you get a bag."
Yeah, that's the only other possibility in my eyes.
Yeah, so that's maybe they saw that news of him leaning towards the Jets and they're like, "We're gonna go up our offer," and they upped it last night, and that's
Yeah.
why that happened this morning. So, um, as far as everything else goes, I mean, we did our running backs, or let's talk Geno, man. Is Geno that's a bad move for the Seahawks, isn't it?
It is. It's a weird contract too, isn't it? I think he gets most of his money in the first year. So I
He's gonna make
mean,
55 million year one.
yeah, so I mean it's like if he comes out and he's trash, this next season, then it's kind of gonna be like, okay, well, I got my money, so
Cut him.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Because then I think they're front loading all that like the heavy money. So year 2 or 3, they could cut him for a decent cap hit if it's so. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And then we did our running back episode, and we talked Pollard and Jacobs and all those guys. Hey, they all got tagged.
yeah,
So
yeah. So like I told you in the chat, we taking L's from that video so far. We taking L's some of our predictions.
hey, it's all good, man. But let's talk about what we came here to talk about today, man. NFL Combine. And I think the best way to do it is let's just talk first overall reactions. The good, the bad, the ugly. How do you feel about the NFL Combine? How do you feel about some of the players? Who stood out? Who didn't? Where are you feeling as far as that goes after the last couple days?
I'll be okay. How do I feel about the combine? That's the top question that you asked. I think the combine is absolutely useless. I'll be completely honest. I mean, I feel like the combine is good to, show some raw traits of the athletes, but other than that, like for instance, you get these combine warriors. I'm going to talk a lot. That term is going to come up a lot during this live stream. Get these combine warriors go out there and just show that they're super athletic. Then they get to the NFL and get on the team and crap the bed the minute that they're out there with the live bullets flying. So I think the combine itself is kind of useless. I think the most valuable thing in the combine that you can learn is how fast the guy runs. And if that's the case, then why don't you just have everybody, do their 40 and then just go off into, their pro days or whatever. So I mean, that's just my opinion on the
Fair
combine.
enough. So you're saying we shouldn't like totally overreact and make sure that like we know now
No,
who we're drafting on our dynasty teams because of the Underwear Olympics?
exactly. And I mean, there's gonna be some. There were some performances during the combine where it was like, okay, I could totally see the value of this player showing up at the combine. But other than that, yeah, I think overall, it's useless.
Yeah, I think I somewhat agree with you, and I think really what I think is that for your top guys, the combine is really just to get face to face with them as a GM and interview them and talk to them because you've already created your opinion on them. You've watched the tape, you've done the scouting, and these guys are good. So unless they come in and like have a horrible, horrible, horrible combine, like you're really not raising any eyebrows, I don't think, as an NFL GM. Now, as dynasty fantasy football players, I think that for us, it really shouldn't mean too much. I think what I've seen from fantasy Twitter and other YouTube channels and other things like that is that it's really just confirming people's biases that they've already created, or it's confirming negative biases that they've already created as well. So like people who feel like CJ Stroud was the best quarterback coming into the combine, they think it now because they saw him throw. And so, like, it's just people reconfirming their opinions, or people who think that, X player is overrated and they come in and they run a 4.5, then they're like, oh, see, overrated, shouldn't be as high
Yeah,
as he should be. Like, so I agree with you. And it looks like even Marshall says, I agree with Ward to an extent. Combine causes huge overreaction or overreactments. So, um, Yeah, man. So I do agree with that. But I kind of already have segued us a little bit by talking QB. But from the quarterback positions, we did have three of our top four quarterbacks work out. And the only one who didn't work out, unfortunately, is Bryce Young. And I say unfortunately because I've been a big Bryce advocate. I think that Bryce Young's tape is phenomenal. I think he's performed at the top of his class at every year, all the way from Pop Warner football. So, really, honestly, I think it would have been beneficial to see Bryce go out there and throw with the other guys just to prove that he's the alpha. But unfortunately, he didn't. We'll see him at the pro day. But we did get to see the other three. So, with the other three, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Um, how do we feel? I'll just go down through the top three of them. Let's just start right now with C.J. Stroud. And CJ Stroud, man, he comes in, measures in at 6'3", 214 pounds. Uh, Ended up having a pretty solid combine. I want to say he didn't do any of the workouts. So he didn't run the 40, he didn't do the vert, he didn't do any of the other stuff, but he went on the field and he threw the ball, and he looked pretty damn good when he threw the ball. So how do you feel about CJ Stroud now going into that? Like, I guess really just tell me, how did you feel about CJ Stroud beforehand, and has anything changed, or did you see things that you liked?
I'll be completely and utterly honest. Going into the combine, I just said the combine was useless, right?
Yeah.
Going into the combine, I had my rank as far as like what I believed, not necessarily who I thought was better than who, but the order of who I thought would be drafted. I thought it was going to go Bryce Young. I thought it was going to go Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Now, after the combine, I'm willing to bet that it's going to go CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and Will Levis. I
Okay.
think that's going to be the order.
And that's
Just
your rankings, or that's how you think they'll
no,
be drafted?
that is how I think they'll be drafted based on the rumors that I hear.
Okay. You said that you've had some, or you've heard some rumors, or had some rumblings
Yes,
of Chicago.
yes,
If that's being traded, right? Where is it going? Where do
it's
you
been
think?
traded. I think we got two scenarios. Like, I think uh, I think there's a lot of things floating around. I think the top two scenarios right now will be a trade up by the Houston Texans to number one, and then another trade down, either to number nine, where the Carolina Panthers sit, or number four, where the Indianapolis Colts sit. With every passing day, I initially thought the Colts and the Bears were made to be together, but for each passing day, I feel like the Colts are less likely to trade up to number one.
Hmm.
Um, Right now, if I had to put my money on it, to be quite honest, I think the Bears are going to trade down to number nine and get a generational haul from the Carolina Panthers. I'm talking about something along the lines of number nine, Brian Burns, and slash or DJ Moore, the second round pick for this year, a first round pick in 24 and a first round pick at 25. I kid you not. I think that if they trade down to number nine, it's going to be a generational haul. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
Jeez.
And I think if Carolina trades up to number one, I think that CJ Stroud will be their pick. I think that's who they want. I think that I'm hearing a lot of people saying that he really impressed a lot of people over the combine. Um, I think that Anthony Richardson. See where it gets tricky is, are the Texans going to want to draft Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson? I think Bryce Young was a slam dunk going into the combine, but if you look at Anthony Richardson and your mindset is okay, his ceiling. This is what I've heard. This is what I've heard people say. If people are saying that Anthony Richardson's floor is 2022 Justin Fields, then and the Texans believe that he's going number two. because they're saying his floor is last year's Justin Fields, where it's like, okay, I'm not getting that many completions, I'm not doing that well passing, but I'm rushing for 1,000 yards. So I mean, and from there, I mean, it gets really it gets really. I think obviously, and I want to just bring in Brandon's opinion here. Brandon from day one, I don't know if he still feels this way, but he felt that the Colts wanted Will Levis. I think that's exactly what will happen. Bryce could be drafted fourth, man. I'm not gonna lie. If if
Yeah.
if Will if Will Levis goes to the Colts, then I for sure think the Atlanta Falcons are going to end up with Bryce Young if
Okay.
they don't end up with Lamar.
Whew. Um. Yeah. I guess a lot to take in really would be um. Does draft from a dynasty fantasy football perspective? Does the draft order of these prospects change your opinion on their fantasy values?
Depending on where they go.
Okay.
Depending on where they
So
go.
okay. So I do want to say for me, really just going into the combine, man, I think my quarterback rankings were I would call them fluid, but they were still that I still felt confident where I was at with them. But I always say that my rankings are subject to change all the way up until NFL draft day. So, but going into the combine, I did feel like for me, I had Bryce Young number one, CJ Stroud number two, tier break, Will Levis number three, Anthony Richardson number four. But I do think that post combine, I think I still keep Bryce and CJ the same. I still have the tier break, but I've swapped. Anthony Richardson is my QB3 and Will Levis is my QB4 now. And the reason why I say that is because I do think that when it comes down to fantasy football and what we're looking for, um, having the athleticism of Anthony Richardson is beneficial for fantasy football teams. It really just is. And I know that that's been the argument for people. Now, is the athleticism of Anthony Richardson, and keep in mind, it is the most athletic combine performance we've seen in the history of the NFL. Like that is what he put up and that is what he did. Like set combine records. Um two he ran a 4.4, Cam Newton ran a 4.6 like at the same size. So keep in mind this is like the most athletic guy we've seen. Is the athleticism going to save him from what I have been saying about Anthony Richardson? And if you go back and look at the combine preview from before the NFL combine. Go watch that video. I talked about the weaknesses of Anthony Richardson, and I said that Anthony Richardson had a strong arm, but he struggles in mediate and short game. And here at the NFL Combine, we saw him throwing the football. It was those short out routes towards the sideline, and he was missing pass after pass after pass. He didn't look good from an accuracy standpoint in the short game, and that has always been the worry with Anthony Richardson for
Yeah.
me. So, will the athleticism save him from that? I don't know, but if I'm going to risk my dynasty fantasy football team on an inaccurate quarterback, which I think Will Levis is still inaccurate too, a little bit. Um, I'm just going to go for the inaccurate one that's super athletic.
Yeah, I agree. What I'll say, Anthony Richardson's scouting report sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it? Um, it sounds just like Justin Fields, to be honest. Justin struggles in the short game. But here's the difference, and I heard this from, I forgot which analyst said this over the past couple days when the hype for Anthony Richardson spiked. Yeah, they have some of the same flaws, but the difference is Justin Fields has a body of work in college that shows that he's capable of passing if you got the right weapons around him. Anthony Richardson struggled in college was at something that Justin Fields excelled at. So I think they're two different quarterbacks. I still don't think Justin Fields. I still think he's better a passer than people are giving him credit for. Um, Anthony Richardson. Let me ask you this: what are the chances that he gets converted to another position?
Zero.
You don't think so? So you
No.
think that if he struggles mightily at quarterback, you don't think that he could possibly be moved to another position?
I feel like it would have to be like catastrophic
Yeah,
numbers. Like he would have to completely fall flat on his face. Like I think I know where you're getting at because I've seen on I saw on Twitter today an NFL analyst saying that the floor for Anthony Richardson is actually Terrell Pryor. Um, and so that's what somebody said the floor was for Anthony Richardson. And so, do I think he would get converted? I don't think so. I think if a team, I think here's the reality. I know that um, everybody was falling in love with Anthony Richardson at the combine, and not just from a physical standpoint. Like I know that Anthony Richardson was going into meetings and going into interviews, and coaches were coming out like, "Wow, this kid is smart. This kid is a leader. He has a good personality." Like they were falling in love with the person Anthony Richardson as well, which to me says a lot. It also tells me that I know that some people were worried about the maturity because he is super young. Like this kid is he's a redshirted sophomore going into the NFL. Like he's way younger than everybody else. And so there were maturity questions, I guess. Just is he too young? Is he still kind of a kid? And people came out wowed. And some of the coaches that came out wowed were Kevin O'Connell and some of the other guys like Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. Like they came out of a meeting and they spoke super highly of Anthony Richardson. And to me, that says that he's he's going to be drafted without question to be a team's franchise quarterback. And they're going to give
it
him the
might
opportunity to go do that.
it might be your team. It might be your team, man.
I
Like
wouldn't
you know,
I
you
wouldn't be
know, you
mad.
know, you know what I say when it comes to your team. I'll never forget the fact that, and let's remind everybody, they did try to move up and get Justin Fields. The Bears just got there before them. So
Yeah, because
I
Carolina
why if
wouldn't pick up the damn phone.
yeah if they tried to move up for Fields, why wouldn't a couple years later? What's stopping them from moving up for a kid like Anthony Richardson?
It was a totally different coaching staff and a different front office, though. It was. It was Rick Spielman and those guys.
That's
But
true.
but um Kwesi has already said that they need to, in his words, strengthen the room behind Kirk Cousins. Um, they've interviewed and they've talked to every one of the quarterbacks. They talked to Bryce, they talked to CJ, they talked to Will, they talked to Anthony, they talked to all of them at the combine. They even talked to guys like Hendon Hooker and Stetson Bennett and some of the other guys. So quarterback is a position that they are looking at. It is a position that they are open to bringing somebody in for. Now, I don't think that they'll get a guy like Anthony Richardson because I think, like you said, Anthony Richardson is going to be a top 10 pick. And I don't see Minnesota going up and making that move.
Here's why I do. Here's why I do. Because Minnesota can't sit back and allow that division to have young quarterbacks and they get left holding the bag. That's what's going to happen to Detroit. I don't know why they're sticking with Jared Goff, but I could
You know what I would
they
rather do? I would rather just let's send Kirk to San Francisco, uh, and or something like that, and let's just hey, clean house. Let's get all the bad contracts out of the way, and next year let's trade up and let's go get Caleb.
yeah, that's kind of that's my Justin Fields parachute plan. Like we got to get no matter what, we got to get a 2024 pick because if he's trash this year and our record is bad, my tune will completely be changed. Going into next year, I'm not loyal to the player. I'm loyal to the team. Like my
Fair enough.
tune will completely change going into the draft. But yeah, just on Anthony Richardson. Yeah, for everything you said about how his meetings with teams went, I've heard that C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young had excellent interviews, and
Yep.
I immediately have to put C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young because he had an excellent interview and he performed during the combine. I was watching him during the combine, and there was someone talking about how well he moves his feet when he's passing. He plants his front foot with power, and then he throws it. I mean, so yeah, he I think his stock is definitely going up.
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
interested to
No.
see some of the mock drafts that are going around.
Well, I will say I was watching a mock draft that was happening in the Destination Devi Discord earlier today, and Anthony Richardson was drafted. It was Superflex tight end premium. Anthony Richardson was drafted 101 over Bijan and over everyone.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
so the Anthony Richardson hype is it's here, man. It's going. And CJ was the third player off the board. It went AR, Bijan, and Stroud. So that was your top three, and I'm wondering if that's kind of gonna become the consensus fantasy top three for now, um, at least until pro days come around. Because I think when pro days come around, Bryce Young's gonna show people that hey, don't forget about me either.
yeah, yeah. So, Drew, I want to hear about some of these wide receivers, man, that are out there. I didn't get to catch everything about them, but I do know that the Njigba from Ohio State. Now I know I butchered his name horribly. He here's okay. So here's another thing that I've heard. I've heard that if the Bears move down, because I'm very Bears centric, and that's how I learn rumors based on that. If they move down to number 9, I heard that that's who they actually might draft at number 9.
And Jigba,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean
based
that
on
would be
how well
nice.
he performed at the combine.
Yeah, man. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's my wide receiver one in this class, and it's not even close to me. I think Jackson has the production profile in college. He has the uh, next gen stats, all the intangibles that you look for in a wide receiver. I think they, based on his three cone and some of the other stuff that he was doing the other day, he didn't run the 40. He said he's still recovering a little bit from a hamstring injury that kept him out of some games this last year, but um, it didn't look like he was still recovering when he ran the three cone because he ran like generational numbers in the three cone drill. Like it was fast. And when he went out on the field workouts and he started running the routes, man, he looked like he was a tier above every single buddy else on the field. Like there wasn't another wide receiver that was as good as him on the field. And so to me, wide receiver one, I don't think that there's a guy that I would take above him. But as we're talking about these wide receivers, man, I do think that um, just I know that from the fantasy community in general, we weren't expecting this wide receiver class to be as strong as previous years. We've had some pretty strong wide receiver classes in a couple years, but coming out of the combine, I feel a little bit worse about this class than I did going in. It just it just feels it just feels average, man. I'm not gonna lie. I think the way it feels to me for fantasy football is that we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then a bunch of guys whose ceiling is wide receiver twos on their own football team. And so I think you still have a couple guys that you would be excited about. The Quentin Johnstons and the Jordan Addisons, and even there's a couple guys like Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatts that I'd be excited about a little bit, but um, guys that I had high hopes for that I thought were being disrespected, guys like Keishon Butte, like came in, had a terrible combine. I would be shocked if he's drafted in the top 3 rounds now. And that's what I was hoping for out of Butte. But I think really, man, it's just it's a it's a decent wide receiver class, but the prize of the whole class is going to be Jackson. And I think if you want Jackson Smith and Jigbo on your dynasty fantasy football teams, you got to have a top 5, top 6 pick because he's not making it out of there, or at least he shouldn't be making it out of there.
Well, I will tell this to all our dynasty mates. Just keep this in mind. if he goes to the Bears, you don't want him. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Like you guys said, you don't take wide receivers that go to the Bears. So let them fall down to me. Let them fall down to War. War take
Hey,
them.
well, I'm the only one who's been on here defending Fields passing with you, so
Oh yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't
You,
I wouldn't mind taking Jackson.
and then you'll
Um,
end up just using that against me and just taking my entire team.
but but I do want to talk a little bit about some of these guys because there were some guys in the wide receiver class that came out. Were not guys that I think we were really looking at. Um, and they had really good days. And guys who had good days, Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma,
Yeah.
he had a fantastic day as far as combines go. He ran fast. I want to say it was a 4.38 is what he ran, and came out, showed a good route tree. He high pointed a couple balls out there. Like he looked good, man. I think Marvin Mims could be sneaky as far as your dynasty fantasy football teams go. I would definitely not mind shooting my shot on Marvin Mims late second, early third rounds in your rookie drafts. Maybe even if he gets good draft capital, which I'm expecting him to probably go in that third to fourth round range right now, just based on draft capital. But if he goes there, man, he's sneaky. It'll just depend on the depth chart above him.
Is he going to be your? Is he going to be the what? Because you know there's one every single year, running back and wide receiver. Is for wide receivers, is he going to be the guy that nobody sees coming? The guy who didn't have the best draft profile, but when the game started to matter, he ended up being the one that showed out. Do you think he's that guy?
There's a couple that I think could be. I think as of today, he would be the favorite in that conversation.
Okay.
I
I've
think
heard
so.
I've heard a lot about him. That's why I'm asking because I was hearing about him before the combine, and then he
Yeah,
went
I
out to the
mean,
combine and did well. So
yeah, and the thing about Marvin Mims is that people who've been tapped into college football, like Marvin Mims as a true freshman for Oklahoma, looked fantastic. And even as a sophomore looked fantastic. But as he got more mature in that program, and we just know that kind of Oklahoma had a really rough year this year. So Marvin Mims kind of looked bad this year because Oklahoma looked bad. And I think that kind of is the taste in the mouth that people still have. It's the most recent data that we have. So I think people are like, I don't know about Marvin Mims, but he looked good early on. The breakout age is fantastic. It's what you're looking for when you look at college prospects. You want an early breakout age. He had it. Um, and he came out and he showed out and he looked better at the combine than some of the guys who are being talked about going ahead of him, in my opinion.
well, you know what the rumor was before the combine even started. The rumor was, and I think that's changed because Jackson Smith the Enigma, but the rumor was that none of these guys were worth being drafted in the first round. None of them.
The wide
So
receivers,
yeah. So I think at least one of them worked their way into being drafted in the first round.
I just think here's my opinion, man. I think even though we are underwhelmed with the way that they've tested, and I think the most disappointing thing that I saw this weekend was Jordan Addison, because I've been a huge Jordan Addison truther, and
Yeah.
he comes in and he weighs in at 173 pounds, which is light, like really light for him. And he ran a slow 40, and it just was like, you're light and then you ran a slow 40, but you look good on the football field. So what is it? What are we looking at here? Um, you know, I think when he goes back and he runs his USC pro day, I think he's going to run a lot faster because those pro day numbers tend to shave off some time. But
Yeah.
um, I just think Jordan Addison's going to be an interesting case to follow. I think he got a little bit of a ding on my boards. I had him as my clear wide receiver too. I had him clearly above Quentin Johnston. I don't know if I have him clearly above Quentin Johnston anymore. I think that wide receiver two's gotten a little bit muddier for me. But for sure that wide receiver one is locked in, Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so let's move over and let's talk about these running backs, and then we'll get to the tight ends and we'll close out the show. But the running backs worked out yesterday. Um, Obviously, headliners were Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs. But there were a couple other guys who really showed out. Overall, it's a strong, deep or running back class. I don't know if we have the studs that we think we have at the running back position outside of Gibbs and Bijan, but it is a good deep class. And I do think that in this class, we're going to see a ton of guys who end up getting those. You remember just like 2 years ago when we had Tony Pollard as a handcuff and Alexander Madison as a handcuff, and there were all these like really high value handcuffs. Ramondre Stevenson was a handcuff. Like, I think we're going to get a bunch of that. And it's going to be guys that maybe need a year or two for some running back rooms to shake out, maybe some older guys to get out of there. But there's some good running backs in this class. And did you get a chance to watch much of the running backs?
You know what? I didn't, but I was able to get a little bits and pieces of who did well. Um, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Um, how many starters, how many running backs this year do you think will be starters for this upcoming year besides the top two? Do you think that,
Out of the rookie class,
yeah,
like RB1s for their NFL teams or fantasy startable?
both?
Okay. RB1s for their NFL team. Outside of Bijan and Gibbs, maybe two
One
RB1s
of
for their NFL team.
Charbonnet. Charbonnet is one.
Charbonnet is probably one of them. But fantasy starters or running backs that you can start in fantasy, maybe including the two, maybe 6 or 7.
See, that's why the combine is one of the most exciting times of the year, but I can't wait till these guys get in training camp, man. Like that's where I really cut my teeth as far as like my knowledge of what they're doing. Because you got guys like Damian Pierce,
Mhm.
Pacheco, Brian Robinson. Nah,
Yeah.
but you know,
I mean, he
there's
started the
gonna
year.
yeah, there's gonna be guys that you don't even see that you don't even expect to get a shot. For example, the biggest surprise last year to me was Tyler Algier. Like he was a guy that I think most people drafted that kid at the end of the dynasty draft, and
Yeah.
here he was, getting his opportunity and may even be a starter again for the Falcons this year. So we'll
Yeah.
see, man. That just goes back to my point. Like combine is cool to see how fast a guy run, but you won't really know until they get those pads on and they're in training camp and they're competing against other running backs.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me last year, uh, Pacheco was the most surprising to me. Algier and B Rob, I was in on kind of before training camp started. I was kind of in on them on the draft process. Algier was just happenstance. You know what? Living in Utah, I caught BYU players all the time, so
Yeah.
I was able to catch Algier early. But um, I'll just go through the list of some of the guys. I'll tell you kind of who impressed and who didn't for me. But Jahmyr Gibbs, man, if you weren't tapped in before, better be tapped in now because I've been pumping up Jahmyr Gibbs for 2 to 3 years now since he was a freshman at Georgia Tech, and nobody gave this man the time of day until he went to Alabama. And now all of a sudden people go see him in the combine and now he's like, oh goddamn, this is the next best goddamn running back. Yeah, he is. He's been that guy since fucking 2020. Okay. So Jahmyr Gibbs is nice, man. He's a running back. He's the running back two in this class. And I've been telling people, and I'm not gonna say that I'm not gonna take shots, but there's people in different communities that I'm in the fantasy space that I have said multiple times on occasion this offseason that Jahmyr Gibbs is closer to Bijan Robinson than he was to the RB3 in this class. And at many
Yeah.
times people laughed at me because they thought that, oh, Bijan is generational. Yeah, I think Bijan is, but I don't think you guys understood how good Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be. And
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs is good, man, and he looked fantastic at the combine. But outside of him and outside of my Jahmyr Gibbs rant, um, Zach Charbonnet looked as expected to me. I think we expected him to come in and be well rounded and kind of be good at everything, but a master of none. And that's how he looked. And I think because of that, a team is going to be able to look at him and rely on him as their running back moving forward. I don't think he's flashy. I don't think he's going to be anything that's special, but Zach Charbonnet is going to be a good running back at the next level. Um,
You know who
so
I
I
heard
think
him compared to?
who?
Matt Forte.
Okay. I
Man, if you're getting fantasy football, Matt Forte, that's a good place to be.
Yeah. I think I was on, maybe it was a video with you where it was a video on this channel at some point where I said that I would comp him to James Conner.
That was our running back preview. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think he kind of fits that James Conner mold, and he's going to be good. And he can catch the ball, man. Like he's he doesn't have stone hands. He can catch the ball. He's going to be good for fantasy football. And when you ask me who of these guys can be starters for fantasy and for NFL teams, Zach is one of these guys. Um, but just going down the list, man, Devon A. Chain wowed me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. He's moving up my board. Um, and I don't know how high he's gonna go, but he's moving up my board. And he ran the fastest 40 of all the running backs. And then he went out on the field afterwards and he looked fantastic. And I think the coolest thing is that he stayed after all the running backs worked out. All the running backs were going back to the locker room and packing up their bags. And Devon Achane stayed and he worked out with the wide receivers. And he did some wide receiver drills. And I thought that was awesome because he looks damn good running the ball, but he's also like, hey, I'm going to showcase and show you guys that I can also catch the ball and be utilized as a passing weapon too. Um, so I do like Devon Achane. I think he stood out. Tajay Spears, I've had high hopes. I still think he's going to be solid, but I don't think he did enough at the combine. He's kind of been a sleeper of mine that I've been talking about all over the place. He didn't do enough, I think, at the combine to get the draft capital that I want him to get. But I guess that's to be continued. Bigsby looked fine. McBride looked fine. McIntosh, to me, kind of was a big loser of the combine at the running back position. He came in. He has solid size, but he came in. He ran slow. He looked stiff running the drills. He messed up a couple times. Like it wasn't a good day for Kenny McIntosh. And he's going to go and he's going to do his pro day at Georgia, and I think Georgia is going to do him right and make sure that he has a good pro day there. But Kenny McIntosh, man, he's kind of had a stinker of a pro day for the most, or of a combine for the most part. But other guys that really wowed me, I think, were just a couple left on here is Mo Ibrahim. I talked about him coming out of Minnesota. He tore his Achilles a year back or 2 years back, and he's been recovering from that. But he looked good, man. He didn't look stiff, and he didn't look like he was coming off of an Achilles tear. He looked solid. So I like the way that he looked. And Chase Brown, I had Chase Brown on our
Yeah.
running back thing, and I took him off because I was
Mr.
like, I don't like him that
Yeah,
much.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah, well, Chase Brown showed out, man. Chase Brown looked good. And so, yeah, I probably disrespected him, and I probably needed to add him back to that list because Chase Brown looked good, man. And then last but not least, I guess I got 3 small points or 4 small points. Sorry, the running backs are kind of just deep here, but Roschon Johnson, running back from Texas, he kind of had average pro or average combine for the most part. He's a big running back and he ran okay, but I don't think I was kind of expecting him to come in and look better than he did. He just didn't look as good as I wanted him to look on his combine. And so Roshan Johnson, I still think he's gonna get decent draft capital. Um, but I think he's somebody that just a little tiny yellow flag of like, okay, I need to just watch this guy a little bit more because I had some hopes for you, but you didn't meet the first test. So Roshan Johnson, somebody I'm keeping an eye on. Deuce Vaughn, I just want to mention that he measured in at 5'5". Uh, so for anybody, for I know for some people this is gonna trigger people, but because of that, I've taken him off my draft board. I will not draft Deuce Vaughn at 5'5". I think at best at the NFL level, he's going to be a return specialist. And I think even though he looked solid at the combine, I don't think he looked bad at all. I just think that the height is at 5'5". That's tough, man. That's going to
Yeah.
make it really hard for you to succeed at the NFL level, especially playing running back. And then my last point is that Evan Hull, running back out of Northwestern, he's kind of been a sleeper. I've been doing some mock drafts, and he's going like 5th round of your rookie mocks. But Evan Hull, man, I think he looked solid on the field, but I think he impressed NFL coaches more than he looked good on the field because Evan Hull, every single drill, it didn't matter if it was a 10-yard out route or if it was anything like short. Evan Hull ran it to the end zone as if he was scoring a touchdown on every play, every single drill. And so the announcers loved it. Everybody was talking about it. But Evan Hull, it was like every time he touched the ball, he was going to score. And so he went and scored every single time and he ran it back. And he just looks like one of those guys that like you'd love to have on the team. Even if he's maybe not the best talent, an NFL coach is going to see that. They're going to love it and they're going to draft him because they want a guy like that in their locker room.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah, that's that. And then I guess really other than that, man, do you have any points about the running backs or do you think it's been pretty summed up?
I mean, I think it's been pretty summed up. Running backs, I just feel like they really make a name for themselves in training camp. And like I
Mhm.
just can't wait to see some of these guys perform and see who their competition is and how those guys are gonna do.
Yeah. I agree. And then you said you got a chance to tap in and watch the tight ends and you
Yes.
and I talked about it a little bit off stream, but I told you that in my opinion, my humble opinion, this might be the best tight end class we've seen in like the last decade. Um, and that sounds like I'm really overreacting, but this tight end class is phenomenal, bro. Like, I think there's probably 3 tight ends in this class that could get drafted in the first round. And there's probably 6 or 7 of them that can get drafted on day 1 and 2 combined. So in the first 3 rounds.
I mean, I would love nothing more than for these guys to come out and be awesome and just eliminate the need for the tight end premium ever existing. The only reason it exists is because there's so few good tight ends. So I
Just
mean,
revamp the tight end landscape.
yeah, that would be great. That would be great. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
it would be awesome, and it's going to depend on landing spots. But I think the first guy we should talk about, and we're talking about Anthony Richardson went out and put on a freak show of a performance. This guy went out and put on as good, maybe better. Don't kill me, Anthony Richardson lovers, but maybe a better performance from a freak show perspective. But 6'7", 260-pound Georgia tight end Darnell Washington goes out there. He runs a 4.6, and he
The
makes
sixth offensive lineman.
probably one of the best catches of the whole combine, wide receivers and tight ends combined, a one-handed grab on the sideline on a fade route, and then goes into the blocking drills and pushes one of those blocking sleds 20
Right.
yards.
Just uppercutted it. Yeah, uppercutted the block. It just, yeah. Yeah,
Darnell
man.
is a
That dude
freak.
is a tight end, offensive lineman, and a wide receiver.
He's nasty.
Like,
And you
for
want to know
real.
what's scary? is he in college, he's the second best tight end on his team because they got Brock Bowers there at Georgia. And Brock Bowers
Yeah.
is like, we talk about wanting to find the next Kelsey. If you want to find the next Kelsey, it's probably next year, and his name is Brock Bowers. But um, we're going to talk about this year's class. And Darnell Washington, man, was, I would say, one of the biggest winners to me in the tight end rooms. Um, I think he's earned and he's locked himself in pretty much as a day one pick. I think he's a first round tight end, pretty much locked in now.
I agree. I
And
absolutely agree.
along with him, I do think that there will be a first round tight end in Michael Mayer. And Michael Mayer had a solid overall combine too. I know some people wanted Michael Mayer to go in and kind of set the world on fire, but I don't think that's ever been Michael Mayer's game. Michael Mayer's always been it's kind of how I talked about Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
Good at everything, but a master of none. But I think that Michael Mayer is a little bit better than that. I would say Michael Mayer is great at everything, but a master of none. And so I think Michael Mayer, he's my tight end one in the class. As much as I think Darnell went out and put on a freak show of a performance, I still would rather have Michael Mayer as my tight end one of the class. I just think that he's just a little bit more fluid in everything he does, and he's just, I don't know, man. He has a bigger resume of production at Notre Dame than Darnell does in Georgia, but uh, he had a pretty good day. But I want to bring up a couple guys, and you tell me which of these guys impressed you at all, because there's probably 5 or 6 of them. Now, unfortunately, Dalton Kincaid, he's probably my tight end 2 or 3 in this class, and Dalton didn't work out at the combine. But
Yeah.
we did get to see Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. We got to see Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. We got to see Josh Wiley from Cincinnati. We got to see Sam Laporta from Iowa, Cameron Ladu from Alabama, and Zach Kuntz from Old Dominion. And then lastly, we also saw Will Mallory from Miami. And those are the guys that I think have kind of worked their way into this. Like, all of these guys could possibly maybe get taken on day 2.
Out of all those names, the two guys that impressed me the most were Will Mallory and Sam Laporta. I just
Okay.
feel like they had pretty good combines. Especially Will Mallory. I remember watching it. I was like, I might draft that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I came away really impressed. I mean, obviously, you know, the top two, we know they're pretty much locked in. Kincaid, I think he's locked in right up there with him, even though he didn't work out. Yeah, I was able to learn quite a bit about Kincaid watching the combine, but the two guys that really stood out to me were Mallory and Laporta, and like I feel like they were solid in all their drills.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think Sam Laporta earned himself some money this weekend because I think people had him kind of on the back burner and he was kind of under the radar, and I think he came out and he had one of the better days at the tight end position. I think people see Iowa tight ends, and Iowa has kind of turned into tight end U now, because they had George Kittle come out and some other guys come out of Iowa. But Sam Laporta might be the next one to come out. I think he had good. He looked fluid on his routes. He was running smooth. But he's not small by any means, and he wasn't lacking in the blocking game. Sometimes when you have these tight ends that come out and they look really good as receivers, they
Yeah.
lack in that blocking game. Um, but I think this year, for the most part, the guys who look good at receivers also are good blockers. So we kind of have guys that, like I said, this might be the best tight end class in the last decade because all of these guys can play the tight end position very well and do all of the things that are required of the tight end position. And you could see a bunch of teams that are looking to get their next starting tight end in the NFL, or maybe even teams that are just trying to get that tight end too to help round out the roster with this group of guys. And even more so, like you said, in fantasy football, what a year to need tight end on your fantasy football rosters, because you can go in and you could draft 2, maybe even 3 of these guys in the second and third rounds of your rookie drafts, fourth rounds of your rookie drafts. And see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Like, yeah, running back and tight end are just two of the deeper positions. My advice would be if you can grab your quarterbacks and your wide receivers early. I mean, really, there's only one wide receiver to grab, but I mean, I think you've got a pretty good idea of how the first round of a dynasty draft will go.
yeah, I think so too. And I think, um, I mean, really, since we've talked about all of the positions, I think we can sum it up by saying from the combine and from what we're talking about right now, those first round guys that you can kind of expect, or maybe even your top 10 guys that we're talking about, is guys in consideration for that first round are going to obviously be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. Those guys are going to be in the conversation in your super flex
Yep,
leagues.
that's four,
Yep. You're going to have your Jameer Gibbs and your Bijan Robinsons.
six,
You're going to have your Jackson Smith and Jigba for sure.
seven.
Um, and then you can probably count, if they get good draft capital, which I'm expecting them to do, you can probably put Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison in there as well. Um, so that's 9.
I'll tell. Okay, let me tell you. So after Smith and Jigba, I'm at seven. Honestly, those last three picks will be Meyer. It'll be the six
Marion
off
Darnell
the.
Washington.
Yeah, it'll be Darnell Washington. It'll be Kincaid.
So you're going your tight ends right there. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially in those tight end premium leagues.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can't I
league mates, you've been warned. That's the top 10 right there. You've been
yeah.
warned.
And like I said, I would still put Addison and QJ in the conversation. I still think depending on draft capital and landing spot, you could argue that Zach Charbonnet could find his way in the
Charbonnet.
back of that first round. Um I also think you could possibly, depending on draft capital and landing spot, you might find your Devon A chain back there. I'm just saying. Uh and then I did like what I saw out of Josh Downs and Zay Flowers, but I think those guys are more so your early second round picks um, that you'll get in your rookie drafts. Is probably Josh Downs, Zay Flowers. That group of guys is probably your next one.
Yeah. And
Hyatt too.
let's just peel back the curtain a little bit, shall we?
Yeah.
On our league gamblers. I want to use
Okay.
my draft positioning for example. So based on how we're positioned, we know that you're feasting early in the first round of that draft. You're feasting early. You're feasting real good.
3 of the top
Uh
4, baby.
yeah, so you're pretty much gonna get a pick who you want. But down at the bottom, I believe I'm at 10, 2.1, 2.2. I don't know if you have 2.3 or if I have 2.3. I'm not sure just right off the bat. But I
No,
could easily
I think my earliest second round pick is 2.5.
yeah, so honestly, if the draft board fell the way that I think it might fall, I could go Kincaid, Addison, Charbonnet right there. Boom, boom, boom. Like and then if
You
I
might
in
be
two
able to
point
go
at two
you might
point
be able to
two,
go
A
Darnell or
chain,
Mayer.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and I don't even need a tight end, but my team needs everything. So
You need to fill roster spots.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I'll play a tight end in a flex spot. I'm not scared.
Yeah. I mean, I that's kind of how I look at it at the quarterback position in that league is I have the 101, the 102, the 104 and the 106. I have 4 of the first 6 picks. And I can't see myself picking 4 times in the top 6 and not taking one of the quarterbacks. Like that's
Yeah,
I'm going to take one of the quarterbacks.
yeah,
And even though I don't necessarily need one, I feel like my quarterback room is solid enough that it's not a need, but when the value is right there, you take one of these quarterbacks and walk out.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Because it could even be a trade that you can make. You could build even more assets with one of those guys. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe the guy cuz I mean, look, we don't know how to evaluate rookie quarterbacks. Hell, NFL scouts can't evaluate rookie quarterbacks. So you draft one of those quarterbacks and they go out and they win offensive rookie of the year, or they turn into Justin Herbert or something like that. What is the return on investment on a guy like that?
Yeah.
You're getting what, 3 first round picks for a guy like that when they come out of a rookie year, offensive rookie of the year, set the world on fire like Justin Herbert did. I think Justin Herbert was going for, hell, in one of our leagues, Justin Herbert went for Trevor Lawrence and a first the following year. So that's the return on investment you can get. Now, you have a guy like I don't know, Addison or QJ that has like a really good rookie year. You get what? A first and a player, maybe like a first in Hollywood Brown. The return on investment on that quarterback position is just so much higher than every other position.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
when you have the chance to go grab a quarterback and take the value, take the damn
Do it.
value, bro. Quarterback is the hardest position to hit on. And so
Yeah.
when we have those guys like Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, if you get one of those guys, they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. Lucky enough in that league, I have Justin and Justin. So
I try to get you earlier.
yeah, you
I
did.
tried to get you earlier. I thought maybe there would be some hype after the combine, and I was like, maybe I'll throw you the 106 and Dak for Justin Herbert and see if it'll work, but
I mean, Herbert is on the
whatever.
block for the right price.
It's just not Dak.
Definitely not Dak.
But I'm not giving up T Law, so it would have been I was trying to get T Law and put him with Justin Herbert and have the long haired bros uh as
Yeah.
my quarterbacks. But all right, man. Well, is there anything else to touch on, or any random news, any other things that we had before we get on out of here?
No, man. The next 7 days, man, are going to be really exciting for the NFL landscape. I can't wait to
Yeah,
see how it goes.
I agree. And I do want to mention live stream next week is it's not going to happen. We're not going to have a live stream next week. Because I'm going to be out of town on vacation next week, so I'm not going to be doing a live stream from a hotel room. And so we'll do one the following week, which is going to be let me pull it up. Um, we'll do one the following week, which is the week of the 20th. So next week, no live stream, but the following week we will. And War, you and I, we can talk behind the scenes and decide what we want to talk about, but we might be getting fully into the swing of NFL free agency by then.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be
Can't
fun.
wait.
I'm sure there will be lots of Bears news of guys being signed and all these other guys. So I'm sure we could definitely do, if we want to, we could definitely do an NFL free agency show.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait, man. Can't wait.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for hopping on with me today. And thank you all for watching. Thank you for Marshall, Devin, everybody hopping in the chat, talking a little bit with us. Um, as I close out every show, I do want to just say, if you guys like the content, if you want to support our show, if you want to support our channel, the best way you guys can do that is to like the content, like the video on the way out. It takes you 5 seconds. Just like that video. Dropping the comments always helps, and make sure you're subscribed. If you do those things, it really helps us out with the algorithm. It helps us get our content suggested to other people who like fantasy football. And because of that, we can grow. So make sure you do that on the way out. We would greatly appreciate that. And then if you want to talk fantasy football, if you want to be a part of the Dynasty trade shows, we do have a free Discord. Go join that free Discord. There is a Dynasty trade show coming out tomorrow. So if you did submit trades in there already, they might be reviewed on tomorrow's episode. So thank you guys again. And we'll go ahead and get out of here. Thanks again, War.